AITA for telling my sister there's a reason her kids chose to live with their dad. Throwaway. I, 32F, have a 14-year-old daughter Jess. Her father and my husband died in an accident when she was young, so it's been just us two for a long time. As a result, we are very close and she's a lot more open to me than most kids are with their parents. Around a week ago she asked me if I could take her to the movies on a date with a guy in her class. I know the guy distantly because they've done some extracurriculars together and I was thrilled he was my daughter's first boyfriend. I took them a few days ago and they ended up hanging out at our house for a bit afterwards. He was extremely polite and maybe it's just the mum inside me, but I couldn't be happier for her. I went to my older sister's house for coffee earlier this morning. Backstory: my sister has two teenagers, 16 and 17, who live almost full-time with their dad. They had a very messy divorce around 3 years ago, and both kids choose to live with their dad. The reason for this was because my sister was extremely overbearing on them. She was the kind of mum who believed kids should have no privacy and she should run their lives until they were adults. I know she had many arguments with them because she would take away their doors, not let them hang out with friends, search through their phones every night, etc. This was the primary reason for her divorce, although she won't admit that. While I love her, as someone who grew up with little privacy, I fully understand why her kids don't want to live with her. My daughter came up in conversation and so brought up her first date. When I explained how it went, my sister laughed and told me that I must be joking. When she realized I was serious, she told me I was a terrible mother for letting my daughter walk all over me and not setting boundaries. She ranted on for a while, but she basically said that 14-year-olds are incapable of going out themselves and that I was being lazy and neglectful by allowing her to do that. She also said I would never allow my kids to do that, so I replied by saying that's exactly why your kids drive with their dad. She got very quiet and then told me to leave. When I got home I started thinking more about what I said, and while at the time I thought I was simply telling her what she needed to hear, now I'm wondering if I crossed the line. NTA. A hit dog hollers. She was only upset by what you said because deep down she knows it's the truth, and doesn't want to admit it to herself or anyone else. A hit dog hollers. I am so going to steal this. LOL. I stole it from Reddit myself, carry on the tradition. I am on the fence with this. I think you know that your sister would react in a negative way to this story and would ask that you examine your motives in telling her about it. It may be constructive for the two of you to discuss your different parenting styles, and to then develop a boundary for what can and cannot be discussed safely with her. If you knew it would get a reaction, then AITA. If not, and you were genuinely surprised, then you should be forgiven, and forgive yourself for the outburst, but I think you know it was not the optimal way to react if you want a real relationship with your sister. NTA, your sister thinks holding boundaries is the same thing as making demands, and she'll eventually learn that her children aren't accessories to treat as she wishes without consequence. This right here. Op's sister emulated their parents, I'm assuming, and thought it worked fine for me, so it should work for my kids too. But she's too stubborn to admit that was the key reason for the divorce. While it was a low blow, I say Op wasn't TA for saying it. Sis needs a reality check. Was it a low blow though? The sister had been shitting on Op's parenting for a while. Also, why would you want to control the lives of your children instead of guiding them to adulthood? Learning about responsibilities and staying safe. I never understood those controlling parents you see so often on this sub. I say it's a low blow, but the door was open, so yeah. AITA for telling my son that being a nerd doesn't mean that he's superior to anyone, especially his little sister. I have two kids, Jake and Jamie. Jake is 16 meters and big into the media I like is my entire personality, and I'm better than you because I like those things, and has grown up to be very judgmental, cold, and mean. We honestly do not know how this happened, but his nasty attitude comes out the most at his little sister. Jamie is 14F and is a very bubbly, friendly girl. She makes friends with everyone everywhere she goes, and she is also kind of a mini trendsetter for her school. She started selling homemade scrunchies at school and it took off. Jake makes fun of her all the time for being vapid, girly, etc. So my husband talked to him about misogyny, because we were both shocked on where that came from. We thought the issue was handled, and he started to be nicer to Jamie. Until the last week of school, Jamie came home from school having won an award for the scrunchie business. We were proud of her and had tacos, her favorite, for dinner. Mind you, if Jake did something like that, we'd do the same. We love to celebrate their successes. Well, Jake was pissy at dinner and interrupted to talk about his video game accomplishments. We were all very polite and listened and congratulated him. He just looked at his sister and was like, and I did that by myself without having to make everyone else hear about it all the time and dressing up like a pick-me to get everyone's attention. I just looked at my husband, then Jake, and said, being a nerd doesn't make you superior to anyone in this family, Jake. You can like video games and still be a nice person to your family, especially your little sister. Quit acting like a little snot. He got red in the face and took his little tantrum upstairs to his room. Since then, he's barely talked to anyone and just holes up in his room playing games all day. My husband did tell me that I shouldn't have said that because it's going to pit them against each other more, even though Jamie doesn't get why her brother treats her like this. AITA? NTA. Cut the internet off and see how much he can do by himself then. Kid sounds like a nice guy in the making. I recommend some therapy, but also try to open a dialogue with him to figure out where all this anger towards anything feminine comes from. I think there might actually be some kind of secret here, NTA. A lot of younger people who play a lot of video games are subject to others online. Men who play video games online kind of tend to be misogynistic and judge feminine things. He could be picking it up through the gaming. Either way, NTA definitely find out why he's like this and post an update. AITA, because you are both why Jake can get away with this. A sulking tantrum playing video games in his bedroom? Isn't that what he does all the fucking time already? Some consequence for being a shit/s. To hard? Ha. A whitey comeback does jack shit regarding this problem. Uno, the misogynist baby who locks himself in his room all day playing video games, is so fragile his sister's success makes him feel insecure. All the while probably going down the misogynist incel rabbit hole on social media. Then he lashes out at what reminds him he is a failure instead of doing something about being a gamer with gaming accomplishments that are all supremely worthless to anyone except himself. Selfish baby boy. Unplug him. Get him to touch some grass. AITA, for calling my dad out for saying mom would have loved his wife / would have been happy for them as a couple. My mom died when I was 16 meters. 3 years later, dad started dating the one woman my mom hated most in the world. They had beef going on since childhood, and then when they worked together it continued. Mom used to say how much she hated her, how she'd be glad when she no longer had to have her in her life. She said she was the worst person ever. It used to be a joke with my dad and my mom's family that mom would haunt her if mom was the first of the two of them to die. Everyone knew the feeling was mutual between them though. So much that people they worked with did everything so they never had to work together, and their boss almost fired my dad's current wife back in the day for her unprofessional behavior. Dad fell in love with her though, and ever since he's been determined to paint a different picture. It turned my mom's family against him, who hated him for his choice of partner after mom. They said if he expects to reunite with mom in death, then he has another thing coming because she would never forgive him for choosing her, his current wife. His choice of wife bothers me too. As well as how he talks about her and my mom. He has talked endlessly about how she would have loved his wife or how happy she would be for them. Once he even said she sent his wife to us so when I have kids, they can have a grandma. My fiancée and I were having dinner with my dad and her parents. Dad's wife was there too. Dad started off on his BS about this, and I called him out and reminded him that mom hated her, and that the feeling was very much mutual while she was alive. That he had the right to move on but to stop painting a pretty picture. He told me I had done that to hurt him and that he didn't need my judgment. AITA? I'm going with AITA. What does it cost you to be kind? What is the point of pointing out to her and your dad and everyone around that she and your mom didn't get along? Over and over. Who does it hurt to let your dad think that? Let him be happy and put this feud to bed. There is no point to carry it on for your mom. NTA, your dad is attempting to gaslight everyone around him so he doesn't have to feel bad about his choice in partner. The other side of the situation is, he doesn't have to feel bad. He waited an appropriate amount of time after the loss of his first wife and then found love. It doesn't really matter who with. He does not require his late wife's approval or your approval. He's an adult, you're an adult, and he has every right to be happy. Am I the asshole for telling a fellow mother of a special needs child that my daughter is not responsible for her child? I have 2 children who we'll call Maria, 14F, and David, 7M. David is on the autism spectrum. He is non-vocal and requires a fair bit of specialized care. Since his birth, Maria has had to take on a partial caring role for David for a variety of reasons. I make sure that this is not to an extent where she is taking care of him, however. Just enough so that she can help out while not losing out on her own life and experiences as a child. Unfortunately, this does not always work out as intended, and sometimes Maria does have to step up when I and my husband fail. But I always make sure to make it up to her and reward her for the time she helps us out like I would a normally paid caretaker. This summer, I enrolled Maria in a summer art program. She had been looking forward to it for months and was ecstatic on the first day. This enthusiasm quickly turned sour and she stopped wanting to go after only the first 2 weeks. This was because Maria was essentially assigned to watch over a girl we'll call Helen. Helen is a girl who is also on the autism spectrum. I know Helen's mother personally, and when she learned that her daughter and mine were going to be in the same art classes over the summer, she asked the organizers personally to essentially assign Maria to be Helen's mandatory friend over the summer. Over the first 2 weeks, Maria was essentially burdened with Helen. She spent a good chunk of the class time helping Helen out with her own projects instead of being able to work on her own. She also at one point had to help one of the teachers out when Helen began to have an anxiety attack and did not get to do any art the entire day. When I learned of this, I was livid. I contacted the organizers of the art program and went off, demanding my money back and threatening to report them for having a student, and a minor at that, responsible for the care of a special needs child. They let it slip to me that Helen's mother told them that I and her were close friends, which is not the case. I called Helen's mother up as well and went off, demanding to know where she got the nerve to ruin my child's own experience and treat her like a caretaker for her own child. She claimed that Helen wanted to do the art program, but she was afraid that she would not be able to do it alone, that Maria had experience with special needs children and that she felt safe with her being next to Helen's side. She then yelled at me, called me a heartless asshole, and said that I should know where she was coming from. I got my money back Monday and am looking into private art tutoring options for Maria. When my husband learned what happened, he lost it. Said that I should be understanding of Helen's mother considering our own situation. So now I'm second-guessing myself. Edit. Just a quick clarification. My husband is not mad at me for pulling Maria from the class or being mad about her being used as a caretaker. He agrees that was wrong and is not happy about it. What he got mad about was me calling Helen's mom and confronting her. His point of being understanding to her was not about Maria being a caretaker for Helen. It was about Helen's mom asking in the first place. He does not agree with the way the class handled it at all, and he supports me in taking this issue all the way to the top. What he is mad about is dropping Helen's mom in and fighting with her personally. So, for the question at hand, involving Helen, NTA. You're right, your daughter shouldn't have to look after someone if she doesn't want to. But, on that note, Maria does have to step up when I and my husband fail. Do better. Because I guarantee the biggest reason she's disappointed she couldn't do the art program is that she needed a break from parenting her brother, and didn't get one. I get that you compensate her, but time is a finite resource she isn't going to get back. AITA. This reason alone is why I think OP is the R. Your 14-year-old child is not there to pick up the slack for your failed parenting. I highly doubt they're paying her as much as a trained caregiver would make to compensate for the 14 years/O time. A reward is not hourly pay for caring for someone. I'm glad OP stuck up for their child, but they're still an R. Stop being cheap and hire a daycare service or caregiver to let your child have a childhood again. This reason alone is why I think OP is the R. Your 14-year-old child is not there to pick up the slack for your failed parenting. This is just so rose-tinted. Real life doesn't work in absolutes. A child should never be responsible for care of younger siblings, just doesn't work. The correct approach is a child should not regularly be voluntold to take responsibility for younger siblings. It is absolutely okay to pay your children for babysitting their own siblings, and it is absolutely okay to have them do it sometimes anyways. Stop being cheap and hire a daycare service or caregiver to let your child have a childhood again. Nobody said that OP's daughter is caring for her brother all day or every day. This is not a job for a daycare or full-time caregiver.